going on, everyone? Welcome in, welcome in. What's going on? What's up, Chris? What's up, Sis? What's going on, Williams? Spy puts killed your day? I can imagine. That's rough. The funny part was that we actually thought yesterday's rally was insane. Pretty much the close, the end of the day, the after hours action literally just carried on this momentum that we got after hours. Insanely crazy. What's going on, Tick? So I gotta say that action that we saw this afternoon was just insanely crazy. Spy being up what about 2 points after hours. The stock split, insanely crazy afternoon after just watching just dry paint more or less for the today's price action. Just literally moving within pennies, it felt like. So definitely a good sign that we ended up getting continuation on the push for a lot of the bulls. I think that's really what the bulls wanted to see here today. They're not necessarily in the clear just yet, but I think they're pretty much winning from where we bottomed out after making a higher low here from back from the 28th after making a low of about 431, ripping now SPY sitting about 455 after hours, after it closed. I mean, that's a hell of a move that bulls are pretty much just leading the way. But what an insanely move out of Google as we get started. I don't think anyone saw that stock split really coming. And you pretty much heard me and Avery just talking about Google Flow literally coming in on TFC's flow alert page. And I don't think anyone expected it to be for a catalyst per se. We just thought it was just random flow coming in, just regular earnings bets. So we did not definitely see this coming. It looks like the amount of flow that we got that pretty much triggered all the alerts on our page though. Obviously, you see someone pretty much knew something. That's really what you got the vibe. Now, after seeing the breaking news, it's like, all right, now I pretty much see where all the volume was coming from. All these past days, pretty much hearing Air Drake and Avery just basically saying, oh, look, there's another major flow alert coming off of Google. And then we also had a few Nemesis the past few weeks also. So I gotta say, it felt like it was pretty much leading up to this earnings, feeling like someone actually knew something ahead of time. It's just that we were pretty much just a little too blind to really follow the volume and the buyers that pretty much stepped in there. And also, I mean, we pretty much been preaching you don't want to gamble on earnings, but this is why you typically sometimes take lottos. So I gotta say, even if you end up doing some kind of lotto, some kind of debit call spread, it ended up paying out. But I think for the most part, and pretty much everyone on live has pretty much agreed with that. Other than Tom, you see us pretty much staying away from earnings. So I'm not gonna go ahead and pretty much sit here and say, you know what, go lotto pretty much on Amazon, expecting them to be the next one to announce a stock split. Because if that was the case, then we would have heard about a stock split from Amazon before the pandemic. Because that's literally felt how long we've been waiting for that on Amazon. So I don't expect Amazon to announce a stock split. So don't go too crazy trying to get FOMO and expecting Amazon to be the next one to announce later this week on their earnings. And pretty much just a hunch. I actually feel like it's coming from Netflix here soon. Just given the fact that their stock literally just dumped from 700 points down to what sub 500 now. I think we're pushing about 455 or so right now. And you pretty much heard me talk about Netflix on the watch list last night. Hell of a continuation this morning. I said it was likely headed towards 450. I think we're touching about 458 after hours when we closed. So that was a hell of a move. The only problem was that it was very much a slow grind. If you didn't catch it when it was flat, it literally popped $9 within a matter of minutes, and it was a slow bleed pretty much up. So that was definitely one that hit on the watch list last night. But it just feels like since their stock actually dropped since $700, now being under 500, you've seen them pretty much raise prices across the board. So it kind of feels fitting that they're gonna end up trying to announce something to get their stock back up at some point in time. So I would anticipate that Netflix would be the one to actually announce a stock split next. Doesn't mean that it's coming now or it could end up coming towards the end of the year. But I feel like it's gonna be more so Netflix than any other name, just because Amazon really just feels like they're being stingy about the fact that they really don't want to make their share prices any cheaper, and I don't think that they really cared. And we also had that hunch from Google as if they had no interest of doing this kind of thing. So that's just a hunch from what I'm actually indicating is that I would expect since Netflix pretty much their stock prices dropped so much so dramatically, I think that'll be the next one, but that's just my hunch. All right. But hopefully there's another one on the horizon. Who knows? Maybe Elon Musk will actually give us another stock split off of Tesla because at the rate that it's still holding and still actually pretty much breaching right around the 1K mark, I wouldn't be surprised if Elon Musk actually does that yet again sometime later on in the year. So, no, there's a lot of different choices. I just don't think that Amazon is the choice. And I know that's pretty much going to be the fallback. Everyone's going to default right back to Amazon, saying it's going to be Amazon next. Pretty much just a message. Don't go too crazy. Don't try to pretty much full put your portfolio basically into Amazon calls or Amazon leads for that matter. So just be cautious about that. But as you see, sometimes the lottos actually do end up paying off, especially on the names that you least expect. And I think for Google here, we least expected it to do anything of this sort. So that's pretty much what ends up happening is when no one really pays attention to earnings like that. I think someone in chat, in premium chat, actually was telling me to get in QQQ calls or get into Google for earnings. And I mean, honestly, I didn't want to end up FOMOing in, especially after we got such a rally already. But the old me, I probably would end up taking a lotto earnings. But the new me, being Air Drake now, I pretty much more disciplined, especially during these market volatilities. But getting into SPY so we can cover pretty much what I'm looking at for forecast going into tomorrow here. As you see, we pretty much have what I would say is more of an ascending channel, not more so a bear flag anymore given the price action and the continuation that we're getting off of futures here. But you do have a nice little ascending channel. We're hitting right into the resistance to the ascending channel here off of SPY based upon the way that after hours closed. So we're pretty much sitting right around 455 on SPY after hours when we closed. So that puts us right into the resistance of this channel. Now, what I'll be watching for tomorrow is one, if we end up holding this after hours price action, meaning that if we hold SPY 455, if we can't hold SPY 455, then it's a possibility that volatility comes right back into the market here, and we could end up possibly retesting 450, even down as far down as 448 on SPY. If we can hold the 455 level, and this is the big if here, if bulls continue to get the control, then we can end up testing 460, in which that gap fill to be precise is at 459.96 on SPY. And that was back from January 18th. So I'll be watching for this level on continuation above the 455 level on SPY. And we'll be likely testing this gap fill of 459.96, in which that'll complete at 463.68. And that'll be the gap fill that I'm going to be primarily watching. I did have another zone there, but just to give you an indication of how high we're looking at pretty much, if you pretty much see now, you see this nice little, I'll probably put it in white. No, I think it'll stay there. Maybe green, there we go. You can see it in green here, so you see how far we're pretty much away from the resistance of the channel that we're currently sitting at, right? So 460, over 460 here, then we're going to enter into that gap fill, in which 463 is going to be our target on the completion of the gap fill. And that's what we'll be watching for if bulls basically continue to get control of the markets. And as of right now, yes, it's looking that way because we see off of those Google earnings, we see pretty much tech just rallying. We saw the pop off from Facebook after hours. Netflix has a nice little $2 move after hours. The Amazon move after hours, about a $50 move after hours, insanely crazy. And I do have Amazon on the watch list. I'll get to in a second. But pretty much tech across the board, you see that Google literally just carried NASDAQ, and we saw so many names just pumping after hours. But key is going to be to hold tomorrow morning. So as that pretty much puts me right into Amazon, I'll pretty much bring up that chart right now so you guys can take a look at it. I think it probably was more so looking better on the 4 hour. But going into their earnings here, because that's going to be the next one that likely shines ahead, actually after Facebook, because we do have Facebook coming up tomorrow after hours. But watching Amazon here into the downtrend resistance, this is what I'm going to be watching to see a continuation off of that 50-point rip after hours today. And so my targets here I'm currently sitting at is looking at 313, and the next target right into the downtrend resistance would be 358. Those are the two levels that I'm primarily watching off of Amazon. So I want to see the continuation off of that $50 pump after hours, and that'll be where I end up trying to play this one straight up, breaking over that 100 mark. And that'll be the beauty out of that one, right into the downtrend resistance. Pretty much, I would anticipate that we're right around this 3160 mark once Amazon reports the earnings. So I'm expecting about a 100-point day tomorrow if this is likely going to end up continuing to pump like we see this market doing after hours before we close. But about a 100-point day tomorrow would not be surprising on Amazon, following suit with Google up 200 and about 50 something points already after hours there. I would not be surprised. And so I'll get into that one. By the way, for those of you that probably didn't catch my tweet, because I didn't wasn't gonna necessarily go over Google, but I'll pull up the chart real quick. But just so you're aware, because the price action right into the close of after hours did catch my attention. But I did want to point out the 52-week high on Google, so that way you do pay attention to that. Those of you that are maybe looking to get a long-term position, of course, I know that some of you are expecting a bigger move, but some of you that maybe are chasing, just keep in mind we do have a 52-week high sitting at 30, 19, and 33 cents on Google. So if you're ideally trying to get into Google, I would suggest that you try to get in under that 30.19 level tomorrow. Hopefully the gap up does not continue beyond that level tomorrow morning. Obviously, we're going to end up seeing a lot of upgrades come out tomorrow morning. We're going to see the headlines all over CNBC, Bloomberg, you name it. So it's going to be pumped in every which way possible. But my ideal entry would be under 30.19. If you can get under 30.19, then personally my preference would be to just day trade it. Don't try to swing it. Don't try to get into a long position pretty much over the 52-week high, and then you end up getting caught in a pullback. So it's up quite a bit. I think it was about north of about $250 in gains after hours before we closed. So just be cautious about that. I know the FOMO is pretty much going to be sitting in once we see the headlines coming out tomorrow, once we see all the amount of upgrades. So I wouldn't be surprised if we end up seeing north of about 4 upgrades tomorrow morning. So just be cautious about that. Brings me into the next ticker that I was watching was Shopify, and I know that Straight has actually been on top of Shopify for quite a bit. And along with other names in the premium chat, I haven't been paying too much attention to it, but I will say, given the fact of pretty much all the FOMO that's going on in the market, I can easily see Shopify actually following suit, and that's why I want to bring it to his attention. Now, I didn't see the after hours action too much on Shop. It's only up about almost $10. So we do have ample amount of opportunity to pretty much get in on Shop here. I think this one will follow suit. Behind Google, behind Amazon, I think we have an opportunity to get a nice little play off of Shopify in sympathy to all of this. So I'll be watching for a move here. I do have a little bit of a pivot resistance here right around 988. So I'll be watching to see if we end up continuing to break out of 988. If we pretty much move over 988, then I'm watching for the gap fill. So that's what I'll be watching. Gap fill is over 1013. It'll complete right here at 1023. And there's also a resistance level at 1053 if we pretty much extend that rally. But bigger picture, you do see that we ended up breaking the downtrend resistance. You got the nice little, pretty much convincing push that you got yesterday off of that major rally, and then the nice little continuation today. So keep an eye on that, and that'll be a nice little mover. Welcome in, Lobo. What's going on, DK? What's going on, Wiley? Welcome in, guys. But again, Shopify, I think, will likely be the sleeper behind pretty much Google. That's literally going to lead the pack. We're going to see Amazon, although it's already going to be up quite a bit, over about 50 points here already. So that's something you got to be cautious about. So if you're really trying to get more into the sympathy factor of the rally, I think Shopify is probably the way to go. So that's why I say pretty much play off of the gap fill here at 1013 and right into about 1023. And hopefully there's a nice little move there for you off of that one, right? And then pretty much my sleepers here that I'm pretty much watching here. I do have AMAT. AMAT's one of the sleepers that I'm currently watching here. We got a nice little descending channel here that we're breaking out of. You had the nice little convincing breakout, a beautiful little retest. So I'll watch to see AMAT get a nice little continuation to the upside. Gap up. So that's why I am putting my breakout here right around 141.36. That'll likely be the point after a nice little gap up, and we'll target this one right into about 145.70. I'll be looking to see a continuation. So this will be a nice one. I know that AMD had beautiful earnings. Also pay attention to Nvidia. I didn't put Nvidia on the watch list per se off of AMD earnings. Only reason is because I do expect a pretty big gap up on Nvidia. So the levels I would give tonight likely will be invalidated by morning. So I'll see how far Nvidia ends up gapping up, and that'll likely be the sympathy play off of AMD's earnings tomorrow. But we'll evaluate pretty much the levels pre-market tomorrow on Nvidia to play that off as a sympathy. So that one we'll keep an eye on as well. So I expect a lot of the chip names to follow. So we'll see AMAT pretty much right along in that group. We'll see a nice little continuation off of this little breakout, little retest, and we'll target here right into close enough to about 146 on AMAT. Other one was Moderna. Moderna actually had news today. We do see a nice little, what I would say is a little bit of a bull flag formation here that we have going on. So I do want to see if we catch a continuation off of this move. I'm watching for a breakout here, right around over 175. We'll likely catch a nice move towards 181 pretty quickly. So I'll watch a continuation, see if we get a nice little breakout over this 175 mark. That'll be a beautiful one. If for any reason we see likely that tech, for whatever reason, pretty much gives back all the gains from today, that'll probably be where I turn my attention more than likely is to Moderna. If tech is really hot, then of course I think all eyes will be on tech. But that's why I say this is on the back burner. If tech pretty much starts to weaken, if we don't like the sector, how it's pretty much moving, Moderna will likely be the one I turn my attention to. And then outside of Moderna, if for any reason market also does go south, then I'm also looking at Lockheed Martin. The reason I'm looking at this one is because we're also breaking down off a little wedge action. You could say it's a little bull pennant. You have a nice little flagpole that started from the end of January. Beautiful little wedge. Looks like we're breaking down off of the support from this pennant. So I'll be watching. Once we end up getting below 384.90, I'll watch for a nice breakdown here, targeting 383.75. And then next pivot point that I have is right around the 379.30 mark. So that's one. That's why I do have pretty much the ifs and buts, pretty much going both ways. If market's rallying, if we see pretty much the sympathy going off of Google, which I anticipate Amazon, Shopify, they will follow suit behind Google's pretty much massive run. We have AMAT pretty much right along with a lot of the chip names. And then on the flip side, we have Moderna and LMT if the market does go south in general aspect. All right. But that's pretty much my watch list tonight. Of course, I'm anticipating pretty much a massive gap up if we hold today's price action, this after hours price action. So a lot of the pretty much the levels are going to be maybe invalidated. So that'll be something we evaluate tomorrow morning because that's usually what me and Avery have been doing. If you've been noticing, we haven't really been swinging positions very much, just giving what pretty much taking what the market gives us, analyzing pretty much pre-market, seeing what we like, what levels pretty much are in trend with whatever play is pretty much following market suit. All right. But other than that, I think that wraps up what my watch list is. We'll see pretty much what Google does. I think all eyes again will be on Google. So expect 5+ upgrades. Expect the headlines across all national TV, CNBC, Bloomberg, all the case. But I would hope to get an entry under 3019. Again, for those of you that caught that late, under 3019, if we can catch that entry under the 52-week high, that would be the ideal spot to end up getting in. So that's what I'll look for. Uh, if you're looking to go long on Google, and this will pretty much be my suggestion, is I would likely suggest that you go in with shares. If you're trying to go in immediately, if you're trying to get in for a bigger percentage move, then I would likely wait possibly for a red day in the market. If you notice, we've had back-to-back green days in the market. Likely wait to see if we end up having a red day sometime this week, and that'll be the point where you try to add on any type of calls or leaps for that matter. So that would be my suggestion if you're trying to go long term on Google off of this split news. I would wait for a red day at some point this week. We should have some kind of red day, some kind of relief day, because obviously you've seen how much we've already rallied. It's likely that we're going to give back something at some point, even if we end up pushing towards this 460 mark. I would wait, get a little bit of a pullback rather than trying to chase right out the gate. But if you do get the entry under the 52-week high, then I think that'll be where you get the ideal spot, which I don't anticipate it's going to stay under 3019 given all the headlines and the upgrades tomorrow morning. All right. So I just wanted to make sure I give you guys the update, pretty much how I would personally play Google. And other than that, we'll see what the rest of the names do. Again, big gap up tomorrow. We'll evaluate pretty much the levels given what the market is pre-market, what pretty much how much we gap up across the board. I think also the semi names will be also on high watch. That includes Nvidia, that includes Micron. I want to say Intel to a less degree because we know how much more weaker Intel is in the group. But Nvidia and Micron will likely be the two that catch my attention more so. And so I'll evaluate if we get a gap up, what the levels are going to be on that one. And hopefully there's a play that we can call out on one of those names, along pretty much running behind AMD. All right, but I think that's pretty much short and sweet what I was looking at tonight. We'll see what the market gives us, and we'll reevaluate tomorrow morning. All right, but appreciate you guys for tuning in. Do I think we see an early morning pullback? Dagus is asking. I would anticipate that we get a pullback. If you notice, SPY futures literally ripped about 2 points, so I would expect some kind of pullback. But once we do get the pullback, I would pretty much try to do what I do every morning. And you literally hear me saying that is pretty much identifying where the relative strength is. Like this morning, I pretty much identified where the relative strength, the weakness was, especially in big cap tech. And that was identifying that Microsoft pretty much let us down, and Apple was pretty much following suit. So those are the two names I pretty much identified where was the relative weakness in the market today. That's the same thing I will say tomorrow morning. Once we get any sort of pullback, look for where the relative strength is. Like we also saw today, despite all the market action today, Netflix actually had the relative strength today. That was the primary name in tech along with Google that actually had the relative strength. So that's what you basically want to pretty much identify once you get the move up or you get to pull back. That's when you want to identify either or, whether relative strength or weaknesses. All right. So I do expect a pullback. I think that SPY will probably give us back maybe about 454 at the very least. And that'll be the point where you want to actually see what's actually holding up on that pullback. Or if you're trying to play the downside, what's really showing the weakness off of that. All right. So that's what I will play off of. Pretty much a pullback here is looking where that weakness and where the relative strength is. All right. Nvidia's arm deal went bust. Any thoughts on how impact the ER? Nvidia's gonna still have good earnings. It's just that the reason why, I mean, I believe it's already priced in terms of how much the stock has actually already depreciated off of the ARM deal just going bust. So I wouldn't worry too much about that going into the earnings. So I expect them to do good on the earnings. It's just a matter of whether, depending upon market conditions and following suit off of AMD, I think they're going to be hard pressed to really impress. So they are really, analysts are really going to be watching to see if they beat on all lines pretty much. That's what they'll be watching. So high expectations, pretty much is what I would say. Now I don't expect it to tank any much more than it already has, following the news of the ARM deal going bad. So they have already regressed quite a bit. So I would expect it more so or less. I don't see it dropping more than about $5 if be the case. So it should hold grounds where it currently is. But if I would watch to see how much we rally into the earnings, and that'll likely give you a better idea if you're trying to put in a lot on the earnings. All right. Qualcomm shows a double bottom, also like shop. I'll take a peep at it real quick for you before I close out. Take a quick peep at shop. Do you know what time frame it was you're watching it? Probably gives me a better idea. Let me see off the daily actually, because I'd rather get a big picture of what we're looking at. So what I'm pretty much identifying is that you're also looking into retesting the downtrend. So if I were to give you pretty much the big scenario here, if you notice you ended up breaking down off of this little ascending channel triangle that you had, if you notice, you're going to end up retesting the prior support as resistance. So you're going to make a move right into here, pushing right about 180, close enough to 180.70. So I can see that end up hitting tomorrow, but that'll likely be hard resistance right there, in which you're likely going to end up rejecting. So about 180.70 will be my peak of where you're looking at on the continuation of this move to the upside. But once it hits about 180.70, that'll be the point where you get the reversal right back to the downside. So that'll be, as you notice, again, you pretty much broke down on support off of this ascending triangle. You had the nice little flush with all the market volatility we had the past week, and now you're getting that push right back to retest into prior support as resistance at that 180.70 level. So watch for that 180.70, and then you'll get the reversal. Depending on how you're playing, maybe if you're in a position, now you know where to take your profits. If you're looking to short it, then obviously 180.70 will be the spot where you're pretty much looking to get an entry off of. All right. Let me see what are the questions real quick. Any thoughts on buying PayPal at this level? I know PayPal's actually been one that literally has just been dying nonstop. I know that they were down also double digits after hours We saw Square also in sympathy pretty much dying off of that as well. But if I were to really say, it looks like with the market, if we continue to get some kind of market volatility, if you're really trying to go long, honestly, and I'm talking long term, not just like a quick short play, I think you're looking at this level right down here of 121. That'll likely be the spot where it ends up eventually retesting, and then that'll be the point where I tell you to really get into shares. So I'm not going to tell you to catch a knife right here, right now. Let me see if there's any EMAs that maybe line up with what I'm maybe looking at off of the daily, preferably. Yeah, so you're already under all the EMAs. 200's already been broken, 150 EMAs. So all those EMAs have already been broken. So if I were to throw a, I can't even throw a dart because you already have a gap fill here too off of the daily. So there's already a gap fill here as well. Notice the gap fill here is below 139.28, and that doesn't complete until 126. So that 126 pretty much aligns right where near I was telling you to buy, right around 121. So if you really wanted to take your first initial entry, 126 on the completion of gap fill, and then I would scale in as it continues to go, maybe bleed into 121. So 126 will be where I scale in. If it continues to drop, then 121 would be the spot where I end up adding on PayPal. All right. Yeah, I mean that's why I say it's still a knife catch, even though it's at 144. You're gonna likely end up continuing to fill this gap, and then that'll be the spot. I wouldn't tell you to catch a knife right here at 144. Sitting at 144, you're literally just in no man's land. So you'll likely catch right into this gap fill here. Some pressure, some selling pressure will continue to add in. And from 144 down to what, below 139, about a $5 drop continuing into the gap fill. Not very much that you're looking at. So I wouldn't be trying to catch it here at 144. Just wait for it to fill the gap at least to 126, and that'll be the spot where I tell you to go long. If you're, especially if you're trying to go into leaps or if you're trying to go into shares off of that. All right. Let me see two more questions real quick, and I will look at that. Someone said take a look at AMD. The problem with AMD right now, and this is why I say I wasn't gonna look at Nvidia either, Krishna, is because you have to remember also is that we're gonna end up getting a continuation on gap up, and you're gonna get a lot of headlines tomorrow. So I'll give pretty much the levels and evaluation on AMD come tomorrow morning, and we'll be able to determine what it's sitting at pre-market. So a lot of things are gonna end up changing. You see how much futures are pretty much pumping, and that's why I'll be looking at the chip names across the board, AMD, Nvidia, and Micron tomorrow morning, just because you're gonna get quite a bit of upgrades off of AMD. Same thing with Google, and it's like you're gonna end up pumping it pre-market even more than what it is when it closed after hours. So if you can't stay tuned for um, live, if not, if anything, just pretty much tag me in premium chat, and I'll be able to give you the levels I'm watching on AMD tomorrow morning. All right, but I wouldn't want to just pretty much guesstimate right now where it's gonna head to, because it's pretty much a blind spot right now. We'll see what it does pre-market. All right. And someone said, "Can I take a look at Neo?" I haven't looked at Neo, I think, in ages. I think since the pandemic, I probably looked at Neo maybe like 3 or 4 times. I don't think I really looked at the stock pretty much at all. So one thing I identified, of course, is that you're below all the EMAs here off of the daily. You broke the 150 and the 200. You're still pretty much in a defined downtrend. That's the bigger picture. Now, if you're looking to get a quick short play, I can see the continuation of the recovery. This little V-shaped recovery that we got, we put in that little hammer at the bottom there. I would pretty much target it right into the gap fill here, in which you're going to play it over the 26 mark, specifically 25.98, and gap fill completes at 27.22. So maybe about a $2 move in the gap fill here. So that'll be what I would play short term. But bigger picture wise, and this is why I say until it ends up breaking a downtrend, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard me say this pretty much in the past multiple times, until it breaks a defined downtrend, I'm pretty much staying silent. So you are still in a defined downtrend. You could end up testing, completing the gap fill, hitting 27, and you would still be in a defined downtrend. So that's pretty much the big picture I would tell you. All right. But this will be in play is just a short term play here. The $2 move into the gap fill. I can see it pushing that 27 as the market continues to rally. All right. But that'll be what I would say for that. I would certainly not go long on Neo long term until we hear from the earnings. and then I would see how they react from earnings. Until then, I would stay sideline or just try to play that small little gap fill in which it'll likely be a day trade opportunity. All right. But I think that kind of wraps up my watch list, my talks about split, and a little Q&A here off of chat. So we'll call it a night here, guys, and I will see you in the morning. Again, Krishna, if you do want to hear about AMD tomorrow morning, just tag me in chat, or if you're listening on live, I'll pretty much be talking about it once I'm able to see how much we gap up tomorrow. All right. But that'll call it a night. I will see you guys again on live tomorrow morning, and we'll see if Google pretty much rips over 300 in gains tomorrow. All right. So I'll see you guys on live. Have a great night, everyone.